But I spent 9 years plus in GPCA, which is the Gulf Petrochemical and Chemicals Association, and it gave me a lot of insight into the industry, and how the industry has grown, how it has evolved from the oil and gas sector to higher value products, generating jobs for the economy in the region. And this evolution, let me take you back a little bit. In this region, we first found oil in 1932 in Bahrain, and in Saudi Arabia in 1938. UAE started producing oil in 1956, which was a little bit later, but all of the GCC countries have kind of had a similar evolution over time. All of this oil was exported out to the West in the beginning, but there was no market for it here, right? Gradually, as the industry grew, the demand for services to the industry grew. You needed cars to transport and trucks to transport people and goods and the oil itself to the ports. This required them to use more refined products. Now, these refined products initially, petrol, diesel, whatever that may be, were getting imported from outside. So you're selling your oil to the West and buying higher value products from the outside. The leaders here thought, why shouldn't we build our own refineries and gas processing plants and capture this value, grow this value for the region, create jobs for our own people? So they did that in the 1950s. Then they realized in the 70s, as they mentioned, that they were flaring associated gas, which was coming from these fields and these petrochemical plants, these refineries. So they started capturing it. They realized it has a value. They started capturing it and channeling it to the production of petrochemicals, creating further higher value products for the industry, creating further jobs for the region, and growing the economy in turn. And this, as you see, has brought a lot of wealth to this region. Now you see, as Zaid has presented, some of these companies, these are big ones, and every company has gone through a different cycle, are still going through different cycles of growth. Some of these companies like SABIC have gone on from licensees at some point. Today we become licensors. But they are licensing out their technologies, which they have gained through a lot of inorganic growth and organic growth. And this is essentially what it is to become sustainable as an organization over time. So my 2 cents on that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Zaid, and thank you for providing your comments. I will take another example. Petrochemical is definitely the one that we know in this region, but a similar kind of technology evolution you would see in another industry as well. I'm taking an example of automotive. So if you go back in 1900s, right, like around 1908, there was a Ford T model. And talking about the licensees versus technology leaders or owners as of today. Earlier it used to be a closed innovation. You have a manufacturer, very creator, and then there is a consumer. Right? It was a very simple. They will create, they will sell it to the user, and the wealth is generated and which is pumped back into the industry. But now the current situation, if you look at Tesla, there are a number of technology owners. There are technology partners, licensees, right? So supply chain is all divided. So you can't say Tesla is just created by Tesla, right? So going back to this topic, IP commercialization, or first of all, you need an IP, you need a technology evolution. So we are into a world where technology is important for the evolution of advancement, and at the same time you need partners that are playing their role. So we'll talk about, as we move along, what are the important considerations. So these are again my 2 cents to this initial slide.
Very good. So I guess from the ideas you guys are covering why IP and really why technology and the IP protection of it is important and how do you leverage it. I mean, investing in technology and investing in protecting that IP and leveraging gives you best in class technology. It can give you freedom to develop and implement the technology, so you're not bound to other licensors or technology providers or restrictions. You can establish best in practice to exploit the technology and information internally as well as externally, so you're free to share it and do whatever you want with it. The impact would be the protection. You can maintain a competitive edge, right? The whole idea is about competing with your other manufacturing plants or products or services or whatever it is that you're doing. Efficient manufacturing, cost savings, and better yield with competitive prices as well. Of course, there's various ways of exploiting technology. One is to protect your products and services, prevent others from making using, so you get better market value, or maybe fencing around the IP, so prevent your competitors from coming into your areas. And there's also licensing opportunities to generate money based on that. And look, a lot of what I've seen in the region, from universities as well as companies, there's bragging rights, right? So they'll invest heavily in patents without really a clear plan for commercialization, just to say that they're innovative. And right now on the innovation index, the global one, I mean, Saudi is definitely double down on that, right? So whatever, if you have clients, they're very much interested in filing first filed patent application in sight, the Saudi Authority for IP. Why? Because they're getting a lot of pressure from the government to file first in sight, right? As opposed to most of us who file somewhere else first, right? Because it's well-established laws and legal principles and procedures, and then go through the PCT and file next. But there's a lot of pressure right now to file inside. When we have our questions, I'd be interested to hear of your experiences with that, because sometimes that's a struggle for clients. Again, you want to leverage all this. The impact is to increase profit. It's about money. So business is always going to need to be involved, as well as the technology and the legal group and IP. So that's kind of from a decision-making process. You want to involve business, manufacturing, technology, as well as the legal group. A good way to take your ideas to invest in technology and then eventually commercialize it is to have a plan, really a stage gating process, right? So this is an example of one. The idea is at each stage there is things that are done and then decisions that are made to move it to the next one, right? And the business, the technology, and the IP and legal will need to be involved there. You first started out with there's a need for the business to improve something or other, so they involve the technology group, and the technology group will start coming up with ideas. Then, after that, there's a scoping aspect of it. Then, very importantly, is the business case development. Right? And that's another thing I see in the region. The business is not taken into consideration early on enough. Right? So before you invest any money in technology, you should really have an idea of what the return will be. Then afterwards, money is allocated, you start doing R&D, then eventually that seems a good potential, you move it to pilot or proof of concept, and then eventually, if everything is good, you scale it up and you commercialize. So, I guess there's a variety of different things that are done during this one, and I think, Rohit, you guys are heavily involved in some of these developments. You want to talk about some of the things that are done throughout each of these stages?
Yeah, great. Maybe I'll throw a question. In this entire indicating process, why do you think you will start at the very first decision to resource? What drives that? And my experience is, with working with the global organization, if you look at the patent ruling exercise, even if you have IP, at least 20% they prune it on a very periodic basis. Why? They're investing on something, right? Technology. They're protecting it, but then eventually pruning it. What could be the reasons? Any thoughts?
See, I've spent my entire career as part of in-house teams, mostly in manufacturing companies. And to be very honest, when we file, we don't think of the downstream costs of maintaining what we file.
Yeah.
And there comes a time where we ask ourselves, we are spending so much money on this, how much are we making out of this? And as the company, the bigger the company, the more the confusion is, because there are inventors who leave, there are teams which are made for projects, and then the project is done with, and the IP is existing for another 5, 10, 15 years, and then you really don't know where. And then when you say pruning, challenge is when you start pruning, there are different people who will say, hey, no, we still need this, we still have one project ongoing, we can give that away. But then you wait for it, nah, you can give it away, and you have spent 3 years of annuity on that, right?
Right.
So again, even inventors, you ask them like, when is your patent going to be going to be incorporated in a product? When is your product going to see the light of day? Right? They say, I don't know, man, but don't throw it away just yet. I can use it in another project. So these very complicated questions are there, all right? So the patent pruning is when you say 20%, I would believe it's part of an organization which is very confident and have a set metrics of how they are doing it. Actually, it might be less than that because, and the size of the company. Some companies don't care, some companies just feel like, and also the industry. If you look at the tech industry, if it's more than 10 years old, let it go. If it's the manufacturing industry, they would wait for it. They'll see, because some of the projects, they take at least 10 to 15 years to mature also. Like my last company was industrial equipment. We used to make boilers, chillers, vapor absorption machines, industrial pollution, water treatment. So for these different solutions to come together and be an integrated turnkey solution, we had to wait another 5 to 6 years. Different guys have been filing for different stages, all right? And then finally, when you have a portfolio ready, you are thinking that, yeah, I'm going to go sell it now. I have the IP, I'm going to put it in the contract and stuff like that. But then they say, oh, now there's a change in the business model. It's not going to be a turnkey solution. We're just going to go component by component.
You're bang on, and
Just to comment on that and being in-house. Look, at the end of the day, money is the issue, right? So as a legal team or technology team, you're allocated a certain budget. The technology, of course, is going to get a lot more than what the legal or IP will probably be 4 to 5%, and that's even high.
Yeah, that's high.
That's high for a lot of companies, right? But on average, like if you really, like the top technology companies, that's what they're investing in on the IP side. So you're limited with the budget, and the more innovative and the more applications you have. Of course, there's the law firm lawyers that are going to charge 8, 9, 10,000 a pop to draft it, and then as you mentioned, it's expensive depending on how many countries you're going into. Those annuities are going to be killers, and they get more expensive over the years, right? Because governments want you to drop those and keep them for the open, for the open. So the inventors were all, these are their babies. Right? So when you mention the inventors, you go, no, please keep, because this is they're thinking this is a genius idea that I came up with. This is my baby. And you come up to them and say, hey, by the way, I need to kill your baby. They're not going to have it, right? But that's why it's critical to have the business team involved and the business team making the decisions, right? On, am I going to allocate money to this or not, right? Because you're the lawyer. You're just supposed to be, hey, this is how you protect it. Here's the legal issue. You're not making a decision on the financing, right? So, but definitely having a clear system, right? And the system is do I file the application? Where do I file it? Do I convert it to a PCT? Where do I go national? Do I maintain these? Because again, these things can grow and they can get out of control. So the idea is you got to make those hard decisions, but you need the business to make them. Right? Because at the end of the day, they're the ones who are saying what's the value.
Many companies have these things called patent committees, right? So what these patent committees do is once they get an idea, they do basically evaluation of it, like how is it going to be useful, where are we going to do this? And these are ideally people who have a better holistic view of what the company is doing across different projects.
Yeah.
But then again, the challenge with this is sometimes the inventors feel like he just doesn't see what I'm gonna do with this. Yeah. Like for example, in Airbus, we have a lot of people coming up with a lot of bright ideas for how they're gonna have certain things in the cabin, right? Because cabin is directly related to customer experience, and usually, the people who review it, they are just not looking at what the customer experience are. They're gonna even look at what product line, where these products are going to be used. Are they going to be hub to hub? Are they going to be used as a more point to point route? What are the kind of customers I'm going to meet them? Are they going to be more business class customers? Are they going to be premium customers? Are they going to be just like normal economy class? Based on that, do I put this in there? What is the value out of it? So different people look at things differently. So yes, it is just to put a sanity into these things. Having a committee works, but then usually these committees also have a different way of looking at it from what the inventor is looking at it, and these questions are
Definitely having planning committees is the way to go, especially Airbus and Saab, they're giants, right? You got to be able to manage these budgets. But you need to have on that planning committee someone from the business, right? So usually, and this is why it's business, technology, and IP, right? Because again, as you said, the inventors will never abandon their babies. So, but someone's got to.
And just to add to the initial question and the discussion, so pruning exercise, everybody does that, right? Just to ensure that they are managing the cost. And these days, everybody talks about doing more with less, right? Because you don't have infinite money. And there are a number of reasons, multiple reasons. Some you mentioned about looking at what you're starting today, and then after 10 years or 15 years later, you will realize that technology is all gone, right? But inventors still feel that they can do it, so let's just maintain it. Right? That would be one. Second is, what you started with doesn't make sense, right? But you started because the researchers, inventors felt that yes, or there wasn't much coordination among technology team versus the business. And in fact, I have seen many global organizations, IP doesn't align with business strategy, right? It's very clear, and it's an integral problem, right? Inherent problem, and that's what even Zaid is referring to. Having that mix of team, even in the patent committees, and considering that it's a business question. Ultimately, it's a business question. You're not protecting IP just for the sake of protection, right? Specifically for business. Forget about universities, academic institutes. They have different, but again now, being an entrepreneurial university, they are also considering that yes, it should generate, or you should be able to monetize. So yeah, market use, present use. So if you do those kind of insights at the very start and keeping a check on a regular basis, it would give you a lot more sense. And if you look at the slides, right? So starting with the white space analysis, being aware of what is the maturity, and IPs, a lot of data points. If you integrate them well, you would get a sense of what is happening, and then keep doing that assessment as you move along in the R&D gating process. So that would give you a lot more direction, and you can take a better decisions. So I think a lot of companies have started realizing by adopting different kind of committees in place. So yeah, I think that's what I will add.
Sure. Thank you. It's also important that at every stage that we see on the screen, you are creating feedback loops and closing them. A clear objective in mind at the start. What is it that we're trying to achieve? What is the objective? What are the potential uses that we want to have for this particular product or technology? And at every stage that you complete, sit down together, review it. Are we on the right track? Are we still okay with the numbers? Are we still going to drive value from this? And as Zaid says, increase profits. That's extremely crucial, and you need to have that keep going again and again and again. Even after you have commercialized the technology, you still need to look at it at a regular basis and then keep doing this.
So points for each stage. It's good to look at things from a legal perspective and of course a business perspective. So in the first 1 or 2 phases, you want to do the landscaping, you want to kind of do your homework and make sure that, hey, there's space for me to move around here and develop. Or maybe someone else has already come up with this stuff. So I could just collaborate or license from them. Look at it from, can I do it? But 2, do I have the resources to do it? Or does someone else have better resources that I can collaborate with? So you kind of have to have that consideration throughout the stages. Just some things to remember. Around stage 3, you're going to be doing the lab research, and you're coming up with invention. So at that point, you need to start thinking about invention disclosures and filing patent applications. And then, as you get closer to proof of concept or pilot, now you want to make sure that your stuff is protected, and 2, you want to start thinking about a freedom to operate. Because before you go commercial, you want to make sure you have the rights to something, and also you're not infringing other people's rights. One thing to also remember is when Airbus or Sabic or a lot of these other companies, there is licensed in technology, as we had mentioned, that throughout the evolution of these companies, there's licensed in technology. Those licenses have obligations and restrictions. And you better know what's in them, right? Because you don't want to come out with a published patent or a patent application that publishes with other people's confidential information in there, because that's a big no-no. And 2, if you're going to commercialize it, whether internally or license it out, whoever is going to be purchasing that technology is going to want to know there's no encumbrances, right? And those encumbrances are the license encumbrances as well as patents that are out there. We see this a lot. We see it a lot for example, in China. A lot of the technology providers that are coming in, we don't know if it's their technology or somebody else's that they've licensed and now they're trying to license it. So there's a huge due diligence exercise that has to be done. So again, if you follow kind of these principles, if you have a stage gating process and you're involved with business and the technology group as well as the IP and clear those things, whatever you produce at the end, whatever you want to commercialize, it's going to make it more efficient, it's going to create more value, and reduce risk. And I think those are the 2 key components that we want there.
So if I could just add, an example comes to mind. How many of you have heard about Thomas Alva Edison?
We've all heard of it. It's a trick question.
It's a trick question.
Everyone's heard of it.
Just checking whether you guys are still awake. Thomas Edison, he's well known for inventing the incandescent light bulb, but he had patented he's a holder of more than 2,300 patents worldwide. His US patents alone were more than 1,200. The first patent that he did file in 1869 was for an electrographic voting recorder, which was to be used by the legislative bodies. The challenge that he faced when he introduced it, the legislators did not want to use it, because once the vote was casted, they still wanted to have an opportunity to change the voters' mind on what they should be voting for. So it did not find commercial value for him. And that was an important lesson for him. He understood that he needs to match his products to the market needs, and from then on, he always had those feedback loops in place, making sure that all of these aspects are covered. At every stage, he's able to test the market, and he's going to come back, and that's why he had so many successes post that. Every patent that he came out with, every new product or technology, he established a company along with it to sell that.
Let's have one more comment on what they say.
Only positive comments, please.
First of all, I agree with you. What you said is really true. One of the challenging points that we are facing as IP agents, that some people will come to us, some companies will come to us. I want to register my IP rights. We said, okay, what do you have? We are facing two issues. First of all, some people don't want to share with us what they have. They don't trust.
Sure,
They don't trust easily.
yeah.
The second point that they will share with us, then they will have different registration. They will have something for trademark, they will have something as a patent, they will have something as a copyright, and they were surprised that no, I want all in one.
Yeah.
I don't want to spend too much money. So that's why yesterday when we were discussing the yesterday's session, we talk about how to spread awareness among shareholders, among investors, among startups, that first of all they should be aware of their IP assets, how to make it intangible assets, how to make use of that, what is IP, what is trademark, what is patent first, then we can discuss with them. But some people come to us, I want to register this one, they will come to you only when they face an issue, when they have a problem in the market. When he was sending some products to Saudi Arabia, the customers start to stop it. Oh, this stopped my cargo, what I can do. But from the beginning, they should be aware what to do and how much. What you're showing now on the screen is very good. They should put a plan, discuss what they want to do, what is their future plan, what they will do with their brand, with their trademark, with their patent, how much they can spend, how much they will, which countries they are interested. This is very important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And look, as we said, look, IP is new to the region. It's new compared to what the West has been doing. So there's a lot of catch-up to do when it comes to awareness. And there's a lot of organizations out there, like Saudi, for example, that does a lot of awareness. GPCA, we've been holding an IP workshop every year for the last 10 years. We usually spread it around the region and have it hosted by companies. Justin does IP awareness training as well with the USPTO attaché, with the US government, as well as with some of the government and regulatory institutions. The idea is we all need to kind of pitch, as an industry, we all need to pitch in and build the awareness. I do a lot, and I try to work, I even bring in other law firms to do a lot of that awareness, because there's a lot to go around and there's a lot to do. Because we get a lot, I mean, this isn't just individual inventors that are doing it. These are big companies and institutions and government bodies that ask the same question, right? So the issue is not having the awareness, the issue is not knowing the differences, not knowing what to do, but not appreciating the cost that's going to go into it. Again, there's mammoths of companies that come and they want a whole infrastructure built and all the IP work done for $20,000. I kid you not. So this is like, we're talking about millions of dollars that you need to invest to do that in your companies. And those are normal budgets for companies that have a lot of IP, that have technology. Millions is nothing. But they don't yet appreciate that.
One of the issues also that some companies will have a legal team, but they don't have any background about IP.
Sure.
When you talk to them, they behave like they know everything.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to convince them this is wrong, this is right, this is wrong, and they are the decision maker at the end.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
We've all faced that situation.
by the way, I'm seeing where legal groups don't show up to the negotiations when it comes to technology agreements because they don't know. And the problem is the technology group is stuck because they're like, we need this done. The other party is basically wanting certain terms that are deviating from our usual procurement agreements, and we don't know what to do. How do we get it done? You got to get your legal group involved. Hire IP guys.
10 years ago when we started the IP awareness workshops for the petrochemical industry, it was a limited audience for the industry. Over time we started realizing we need to engage more and more people, so we started bringing in universities, TTOs, even the technology company licensors. But at the end, what we did was started inviting students for free. And also customers of these petrochemical companies, plastic processors and whatnot. We started bringing them in. We wanted to invite all the logistics companies who depend on that. Everybody is impacted downstream. So it's important that you are able to communicate to them, help them understand the challenges you are facing with IP and why it is important for them to participate as much as you, as partners in this process, in is sharing the burden.
I think there was a comment made earlier, nothing is for free. Oh, there you go. GPC IIPLA workshops are free for students. So.
Unless you're a student.
Long-term interest.
Yeah, it is about sustainability of the industry, right, at the end of the day.
Well, no, we all have a long-term interest in society,
Yes.
right? It doesn't have to be a financial one. We're just looking at survival right now. So. Okay, I was asked to hurry up because I think we're kind of pressed for time. So this is kind of a grid that explains there's different types of technologies out there, right? And there's old technology and new technology. And also the industry is very different and the considerations that go into it are different as well, right? So, Al, you want to talk about kind of the risk and the business aspect of it?
Well, maybe more than that, I would like to touch upon some of the timescales. Risks are always going to be there. Those risks are geopolitical risk, supply chain challenges, international trade issues. You need to have your finger on the pulse. You need to understand the economic conditions perfectly as an industry, how your industry is impacting the economy, but at the same time, how are the different situations around the world, different challenges around the world impacting your industry and your company as well. So these are extremely important aspects. But if you look at the timescales, something that I would touch upon on the slide, different industries have different timescales for technology evolution. And IT, maybe the timescales are much shorter.
3 to 5 years, right?
But asset-heavy industries such as petrochemicals or even aerospace, the timelines are much, much longer. If I take the example of aerospace, and I was studying in the UK, doing my aerospace engineering degree, we had a guest lecturer from BAE Systems. It's a defense company. They have built the world's finest jet trainer, the BAE Hawk, which is commonly known as the Red Arrows that you might have seen in Dubai as well. The gentleman, he gave us a lecture. He said, the time I had the idea, I drew it on a napkin. To the day the first BAE Hawk finally left the factory was 25 years. You can imagine, the red tape that he might have had to go through with his team, and the time scale that you need, because these are some very, very challenging, and the amount of time, the scope changed from the government for that. Similarly, for petrochemical, you're investing in a plant, it'll take you a number of days to reach, a number of months or even years to reach the final decision to invest. We heard 2 days ago, SABIC has made a decision to invest $6.4 billion in China in partnership with a Chinese company. It has taken them a long time to reach that decision. Now the plant itself will take another 2.5, 3 years to build. And you want to make sure that if you're making an investment, that life of that plant is 25 to 30 years at least, if not more.
And that plant is about, just one plant, is about 400 million to build, right? So if it's a mega complex, you're talking about $1 billion. So the idea is you're depending on technology to build that plant, right? And if you better make sure it works right? So that's why older technology, on this scale, older technology in the petchem industry lasts decades, right? Because the plant has to last decades, right? So when you go to a technology licensor, you better make sure that they have well-established technology that you can go see reference plants and other things. Right? The newer the technology becomes, the more risky.
And today we are burdened as an industry even more and more on the environmental regulations. This further, impacts your thinking around investing in these plants. So it's very important that you are always ahead of the game, always trying to be able to predict based on economic conditions around you what direction the policies could go in, and always speak to the governments. And that's extremely important as a big industry at least.
And they keep changing the goalposts, the companies.
Yeah.
Because I worked in a company where we were in pollution control equipment, and today you're here is going to be this ppm. Next year you design an engineer for that, and then you're here. No, they've changed it to that.
Yeah. I mean, you guys discussed on your panel that a lot of the new regulations are brand new, so we don't even know what the regulation is going to be, right? But then there's the changes that happen. Again, especially like Saudi, one of the biggest markets around here, those regulations are constantly changing, right? And sometimes the regulations are ambiguous. We're not sure what it says, so you gotta buffer in a lot of that. That's part of the risk analysis that you need to do.
Yeah, so basically, there are three angles that you always look at. Technology, right? Technology advancement, technological convergence, role of AI these days, and from a legal perspective, of course, the regulations that keep on changing. The governments, one government may apply another regulation versus a different government, right, or a different country. Then the third one is, the risk itself that are associated from a financial perspective, from a business perspective. So keeping these things in mind, and again going back to the petrochemical, depending on which industry you are, the considerations are different, right? So if you compare it with the software industry, right? Well, I wouldn't call it as just software because then you will talk about IP and will say, oh no, software are not patentable, right? So depending on how what kind of invention you have, or where you are fighting, some of those are. We talk about IoT. You mentioned about AI, blockchain. There are IPs. So basically, how you protect them. If AI patents or software patents are clubbed as a substance to it, they become patentable, right? Then surgical procedures. Again, some industry they don't allow, but if you again attach it to a process along with the hardware, it becomes patentable. So IP risks are different depending on where you are, right? So yeah, considerations are high in the high-tech industry versus another. And I think that also goes back to the point that you mentioned, right? In the petrochemical, why this region is facing, or they're seeing IP as very new. Well, if you look at even globally in ONG, IP industry evolved much at a, it wasn't as fast as you would see in other industries. It's simply because, I think the advancement that happened in another industry and the value they were able to get was much faster than this industry. Because anyways, you're taking out oil, it's an asset, it's a money, right? So if you're already getting some money, right, all it is to, realize a maximum benefit. And that's when, the IP rights, advancement in the technology, licensing in the technology, all evolved. So yeah, that's a discussion about product. I know we are running on time, so getting back to you.
Just to add, like even within the technologies, what you have invented, for process or product, right? So detectability is a big issue because, for example, you can patent a process, but you won't necessarily be able to detect if someone's using that process, right? Enforcement is another issue, right? You can get a patent, but who knows if the courts will enforce it? Or even the court's decision. We don't know if that government entity will enforce it, customs or police or whoever else. So all those need to be taken in consideration over buildings, and that takes us to kind of what are these considerations, right? So again, this is a detailed screen. You won't be able to see it, and I won't be able to see it either. So basically, the way you would take it kind of through the process is if you have a technology or invention, how do I commercialize this? So again, you take that, and we're using the example of the petrochemical, but you can use this in biotech, pharma, healthcare, defense, telecom, IT, etc. The first thing is to consider is where is the business and what's the market, right? So in the petchem, for example, it could be in the feedstock, it could be in the process, it could be in the material, it could be in the supplies, it could be in the products, application, it could be sustainability, etc. So the idea is you take that invention and figure out, okay, how am I going to monetize it? Where does it fit? What are my claims or my invention or technology? What does it cover? Right? Because at the end of the day, stick to your business. Right? So if you're in the downstream, don't worry about the upstream. Right? Stick to your core, because as we said before, money is an issue. So you have to figure out how to allocate this. And this is, by the way, part of the review process for evaluating whether to keep a patent or not. This is a tool that can be used for that as well. Another thing to consider is which stage is my invention? Is it ideation? Is it lab, pilot? Is it scaled up? Because the more you're down that line, the more valuable it is. Then you take a lot of the considerations. We've talked about it already: economic interest, market interest, detectability, as well as enforcement. You need to take that into consideration and weigh it, right? There's a lot of other things. There's, the sustainability effort, there's Vision 2030, there's a lot of other considerations that, depending on where you are, what your industry is, to take into consideration. And then you evaluate that, and then you have to come up with a business model, right? A financial business model to calculate, right? So that could be risk-adjusted MPV. You need to figure out the CapEx, the OpEx, EBITDA, etc. So you need to kind of then calculate the money that's going to be associated with it. And then eventually you try to figure out, how do I, what are my target industries, what are my target companies, is there a target region, etc. So you basically map that out, and eventually you figure out, okay, what do I do with this? Am I using it? Do I sell the technology? Do I license the technology? Am I enforcing against others to stop them from doing something, or deterring? So you basically work through this process to get to the stage of, how do I commercialize that, basically, right? Who's going to pay money for it, or how is it going to benefit me from a value perspective?
And from an IP evaluation or valuation perspective, why do you want to do valuation? There are multiple reasons. One is you may want to raise funds. If you are a startup company or a spin-off from a university, you want to raise funds. Or maybe at an accounting purpose. Pretty much all of the companies, at least public companies, they have intangible assets as a part of their balance sheet. So you need to do an accounting for patents, for your trademarks. Or you are going through an merger and acquisition, again, you want to measure, you want to evaluate. And the important, if you are doing it for the purpose of your core, you want to do it from an R&D perspective, right? You want to ensure that it matches with your core and there is a room for improvement, or it can bring value to your organization. And last but not least, litigation, right? You might be in a patent situation and want to ensure that you are getting full value of it. What if you are winning and then you want to get the damages awarded to you? So these are some of the considerations with respect to IP commercialization.
Not much to add beyond what has been spoken about already by my two colleagues, but I'll again reinforce the point at the start, talking about invention plan, application plan. Have your eye on the price. What is the ultimate goal? What's the ultimate objective that you are trying to achieve? And how are you going to be able to commercialize at each stage? How are you going to reach to that point? Some challenges that you may want to be aware of is some challenges that do occur from the time, and as we are moving towards more open innovation models, more collaboration taking place with innovation and research, you need to be on your guard against unproductive collaboration. Unstructured project management can be another issue that can really cause a lot of concern for you, so you need to be able to keep on guard against that. And then of course there are external factors such as policy and regulations and financial aspects. An example would be, these are something you can't control. An example would be, at the end of last year, at the last week of December, Aramco announced new prices for diesel from 1st of January, and a slew of announcements came from different petrochemical companies and other companies, shortening the projections for their EBITDA going forward. And this was a big impact. A company like Sabic coming out and saying 5.8% impact. That's a big amount, 5.8 million, riyals. That's a big amount for them at the end of the day. That is the impact, economic impact that can come. These are things you can't always be aware of beforehand because you can get blindsided, but these are issues that you can face in this whole process.
I just have a small comment regarding the evaluation of IP rights. I think there are two types of evaluation. The first one is done by the company itself, evaluation for the future, what I will do with the IP and what is my plan. The other one related to if it's for existing companies. Recently we have attended one workshop talking about how companies can make use of their intangible assets related to IP and all in order to get finance from the banks. And we discussed this matter and we said that actually in the Middle East, this cannot be happened because the banking system itself is not ready for that. If I go to the bank, for example, I want to take a loan, they will ask me I can mortgage my house, I can mortgage my car, if I have something physical I can give under mortgage, then I can take the money. If I go to the bank and tell I have a patent registration, I have a trade, they will not consider that. So my question is that I think we are missing here in this region the evaluation of IP rights. If I have a patent or a trademark registration, how I can know the value of it? Who will decide? This deserves 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 1 million, I don't know. So how companies, if they want to make use of their intangible assets or put some value for that, who will decide for it?
A great question, first of all. And thanks for asking that. I 100% echo what you said. If you look at this region, IP valuation, and we get these questions all the time and we work on those. It isn't easy, right? Not even, us as Clarivate, even for companies itself who would like to evaluate their own set of patents. It isn't easy. So you do need an ecosystem that can help you to get a better understanding of what that market size is. So there are few things that are always done, when we look at IP, how global your IP is. Is it very local, right? Then the local consideration would apply, right? And then the impact of the supply chain as well. What does it mean, right? So there are, different types of approaches that are being utilized, and depending on where you are, what kind of technologies, cost approach, market approach, and then the value approach. So applying those, and even if you get that dollar value to your RP, it doesn't mean that you will get it, right? So you have to have some brokerage done who can sell that benefit to a partner, right? So, and again, that negotiation will happen. So if it is a bank is always conservative, and even the banks here are evolving, right? And I was talking to some of the IP office in the region, so there are a lot of discussion around AI that is happening. But do we have a patent examiner here who can review these kind of, right? So that is also, evolving in the region. So there are many things that, that isn't, you will consider it from a west side that yes, it has been done there, but not here. So you won't get a full answer, but yeah, you would get the closest to it.
So in other countries, I think there are approved centers or approved authorities who can give evaluation to the IP assets?
No, not really. But yeah, some of the PTOs have started giving some sort of consultancy. So if I take this region, Turkish and even Saudi, I know there are IP clinics that they are setting up that can help you, give you some insights. But again, dollar value, nobody would control it, and nobody would guarantee that. They would give you some indication based on, A, B, C. These are the assumptions, right? So nobody would stick to it.
Yeah, I think what Rahim is saying is, if you need it, hire Clarivate, and they'll do an evaluation. A lot of these are done by consultant firms, right? Like Clarivate, McKinsey, KPMG, others like that. So because it's based on your
They are
financial.
charging a lot.
What is it?
They are charging a lot.
Yeah, the Clarivate is not too bad. But try McKinsey. Anyone from McKinsey?
No,
Yeah.
I'm not. But I have a following question.
Okay, McKinsey will charge a lot more.
I have a following questions about the evaluations. Usually the way they evaluate in like US or other places, they go based on other products or similar companies or similar product on the market. If like Saudis or in this region, if it is very new, the product or the market compared to the US or other places, how do you go about evaluating Do you look at US market or other markets, or where actually the product going to be sold, or is it going to be in the region?
You look, again, this is all about money and what the company is making in profits, right? And how they're leveraging the IP to do it. An easy one is the pharmaceutical industry, right? Because you come up with a blockbuster drug, you get it approved by the FDA, you register the patent on the Orange Book, that's it. You're set for a long time. Companies will quite often to try to invalidate those patents, because every day that patent continues, that brand name drug company is making millions in profits a day.
Yeah,
Right? So those are a bit easy, like it depends on, what I'm saying, it depends on industry, but it depends on your market and where you're making money.
like, I mean, pharmaceutical, I mean, I'd rather to talk about something chemical because it's more relevant here, and there's more
Sure.
possibility of
Yeah.
somebody come up here
I'm just giving
in this
easy-
region
yeah.
with something chemical or related
Sure.
to the
I'm just
oil.
giving an example of how you,
Okay.
like, as a simple example, an easy one is the pharmaceutical. But if you're looking at, it gets a lot more complicated. The bigger your business, the more diversified your business, the more complicated it goes, right? Because products, you can measure, hey, this is how much I'm selling, this is how much not commodity products, but commodity products, you're looking more at what's your market control,
Okay.
right? Specialty products, you're looking at how much more am I charging than my competitors and your market, right? And do I have patents on it,
Okay.
right? Do I have trademarks to show my brand? Is there, because there's, you know, with the trademark, if you show, you know, Borouge polymers, they're better quality than something else, right? So that's the, or Exxon or Dow or whoever it is, right? So you gotta take, hey, what's my market? What's my business? How much am I charging more in my products or services? How much control of that do I have? And a variety of other considerations, and then they tabulate that, and they say, hey, your IP is worth this much.
So it's basically business analysis, which, like, let's
Yeah.
say a startup out of universities, which usually the invention or the research happen, and the professor start to, with the students, start a company, and they cannot afford to go to McKinsey or
Sure.
all these large consulting firms
Yeah.
to pay those fees. What do you recommend for them?
Yeah, so for example, again, in the petrochem industry, the way we would evaluate it is risk-adjusted NPV, right? Meaning if, and then you gotta take the CapEx and OpEx and all that, there's all these formulas that you can develop, and people like him do it all the time. And the idea is you develop it, you come up with it, and then that gives you the delta of, okay, if I implement this technology, how much more profit am I going to be?
Yeah.
Right, so that's the,
Yeah,
a lot of it is a guess, because, as Adeep was saying, if regulations change, if diesel prices go up, your whole formula is
Yeah,
off.
my question, who do you go to if you're not going to McKinsey or Deloitte or these large consulting?
Go to these two guys.
Okay, great, thank you so much.
Okay, so I know we're over, just to wrap it up, so we talked about the stage gating process to get something from idea to commercialization. You also have to have a stage gating process, you don't have to, but it would be a great idea, for the commercialization, right? So this is kind of a typical one, it's a 7-stage one, the 1, 2, 3 is basically to select the technology, to the feasibility business from and then to come up with the conceptual design package or the PDP, which is gonna be what the plant is based on. Eventually, 4 and 5 is the engineering part, and then 5 and 6 is the EPC where they built the plant. All of those require business, technology, IP, and legal to coordinate. There's gonna be a variety of different factors that you need to take that into consideration. Also keep in mind, when you turn on the plant, it's gonna have to start operating, it's gonna be maintained, right? Improvements, IP is also gonna be, trademarks, etc., will also be relevant there. So it's from ideation all the way to basically selling in the market. IP is gonna be considered, and you need business, technology, and legal involved, and the nuances are gonna change throughout that process. IP.
And more and more we are seeing collaborations when it comes to construction of these plants. I mentioned the SABIC point earlier. But these new technologies that are coming up today, including chemical recycling, carbon capture utilization, but also e-crackers, electric crackers today. These have taken a long time. A lot of research has gone into them over years. The time scale has been long. At the same time, they're in collaboration at each point. Nobody is being able to do this alone. You have to collaborate, and for that, there are IP challenges and opportunities that come up to it. So you have to be always on guard with that.